Good morning, all. Welcome to this meeting of the Employment Committee. As usual, the meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and will be available for viewing after the meeting. The link is available on the Council website. Can I ask that all members and officers have their microphones on mute until they wish or are invited to speak, and that officers show their camera only when presenting reports and answering questions. I have received apologies today from Mr. Shepherd and Mr. Bedford, and we have Mrs. Seaton and Mr. Poland present as substitutes. So good morning both. Thank you for substituting. Agenda item 1, firstly, we need to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of May. These are pages 3 to 8 of your agenda packs. Can I ask that these reflect true record? Yes, thank you. All in favour? Okay, thank you. I shall sign those after the meeting. Agenda item 2, question time. I have received no questions from members of the public. Item 3, questions asked by members. Again, I've received no questions from members for this morning's meeting. Item 4, urgent items. I have no urgent items or haven't been notified of any. Item 5, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest in respect of any items on the agenda today? No? Okay, thank you very much. Item 6, I've received no petitions today, which moves us nicely on to our first substantive item on the agenda of the Employment Committee, which is the Employment Committee Work Programme. A presentation will be delivered by Lucy Littlefair, Assistant Director for People, Property and Transformation. And welcome. Yeah, over to yourself, Lucy. Thank you.
Chair. I'll give my contact. So yes, this is my first meeting of Employment Committee. I did attend the last one as an observer, but yes, I've been officially in post since the 1st of August. I guess, you know, just part of my kind of having a look across the various services that I'm managing and the various different kind of interactions with members and various committees. I just, you know, and it's a long time. It's about 10 years since I used to attend Employment Committee, and I just wanted to make sure that you know, I was clued up in terms of the terms of reference for the committee, and that things haven't changed in that time, and really just made some observations which I'd like to discuss with you this morning, if that's okay, because I think we do have an opportunity actually to have refresh, if you like, the profile, I think, of the kind of people services and the workforce related data across the organisation. And I think that's whether that's with our DMTs, our departmental management teams, or the corporate management team, or actually Employment Committee. And I'd looked back and I'd looked at the kind of standing items that you've been regularly receiving, and noticed, I think, a little bit of a gap that it would be nice to fill going forward around you getting that greater understanding of our workforce. So Damien had helpfully sent me through the terms of reference, which, as you can see, I've set out on the slide there. And then you only have a couple of standing items each time, which is the organisational change planned kind of summary of the various action plans that we're working on, and the managing attendance report, which I think historically Andrea's brought each quarter. Then on an annual basis, there are also 3 reports that we always bring through, which is the gender pay gap reporting, pay policy, health and safety annual report. And that's really as far as those terms of reference go. Do you mind just switching? So when we looked, actually, the terms of reference were last reviewed in 2016, which is obviously a little while ago. And what I'd like to do is just to propose to just to review those terms, bring that as part of a report to the next meeting. I'm not necessarily suggesting in terms of the overall purpose of the meeting that we're making any changes to that, but what I would like to do is incorporate almost like a called it, you know, draft work plan, what I'd be used to known as kind of a forward plan, so that the committee have sight of the types of report that we're going to be bringing forward over the next 12 months. And I think that work programme, I'd like to introduce some new reports. They may well all be incorporated together under one, if you like, where we're bringing a number of different themes together. or maybe two separate ones, one that's more to do with the kind of data and analysis of that, and maybe one around people strategy. But this is why I want to talk to you about it today. And so I think the things that I'd like to really cover there, which I think are of interest and that I think you should know as members of the Employment Committee, is the kind of more data on our workforce profile. You do get that through the equal pay audit that we do every year, and that comes through. But that's largely focused on kind of the gender pay gap and that sort of thing. So it'd be more interesting. I think there's a lot more kind of wealth of information and analysis that we can do around the profile of our workforce. And then what are we doing to make that more representative? For example, turnover and stability. I'm sure you keep hearing time and time again about recruitment retention being an issue. So it'd be nice to see how that's coming through in that kind of data and what we might want to do about it. The nature of our contracts, so whether it's amount of staff we've got maybe on through agencies opposed to our permanent and our fixed term in that sense. We've always had legislative impacts. It looks like it's going to be a busy 12 to 18 months with the various things that the Labour government are going to be introducing, and I think one of the key things actually in the terms of references around policies, and as Employment Committee, I think it would be useful that we start to talk to you about those and what impacts they're potentially going to have on our policies and on our workforce. EDI, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, to give you those updates, and then also various different people strategy themes. We had a conversation at the last Employment Committee that I saw around, how do we bring this to life? And I think it would be useful for us actually to be able to demonstrate that to you on a quarterly basis. So they're the kind of things that I'm thinking about, and it really was just a question to the committee as to whether do you think that would be useful, and do you think there are any other items that have been of interest to you kind of in the past that you would like me to consider including?
Okay, thanks, Lucy. I mean, I've always felt I've done this job now 3 years. Byron did it before me, and I've always thought we're always looking back at historical reports. Occasionally, we're looking at action plans that we've been aware of, but it's rarely sort of looking forward. So yeah, I'd be quite happy with a sort of review. So we can sort of look forward a bit more than sort of historical reports. And I think the conversation some members have raised before, that we saw this issue last meeting or the meeting before and the meeting before, and it's because we're looking at historic data. But that would be my sort of comments. I'd sort of welcome that, certainly. But members, any comments or questions? Harry?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. It'll fill in some blanks. It'll give us extra information. You can't have too much information really with this to go through. I can't think of anything extra I'd actually say at the moment, but as we go on, as we come across stuff that we feel are important, we can always then add that in. So yeah, it's good.
Trevor?
I like the forward work plan. That does give us a good insight. I appreciate more data. Again, can I just put one caveat there? Pertinent data. General data tends to enhance the length of reports, and whilst I've done the speed reading report, I'm being a little humorous, I know, but whilst I've done that, not too long on the reports and a good exec summary if the data leads to lots and lots of length. That's all I'll say. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from any other members? No? Hey, yeah, Brenda.
Curiosity, obviously, because I don't usually sub on this, and it's all centred around the gender pay gap. I'm aghast that we're still having to have the gender pay gap as an item. We've got equality and diversity, but we've got an extra gender pay gap that shouldn't be there anyway, because so why have we still got that there when we're not doing a gender, there shouldn't be a gender pay gap now. So I'm just interested, that's all.
Do you want me to come in? Yes, okay. So the gender pay gap reporting is a statutory requirement. We have to report our
You're on.
Yes.
You're on.
Yeah. We have to report on our gender pay gap from a statutory basis every year. The new government are proposing to extend that pay gap reporting to race and also disability. So we will have a statutory responsibility to report on those issues as well. I think in terms of the pay gap that we have reported most recently at Leicestershire County Council, and I can't remember the figures off the top of my head, but we are closing that year on year. One of the issues that we have in Leicestershire is that we have a predominantly female workforce and we have a lot of services that are in-house where other councils may have outsourced some of those services. So school food, home care, those kind of areas where some of our lowest paid women are. And that is the balance that we have, is that we have more female employees in those lower paid roles.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? No? I think certainly, obviously Lucy being sort of new in position, I think, yeah, we'd welcome that. Yeah, if you came back with your next meeting with sort of your updates as to ideas and ways forward, and yeah, possibly sort of changing the way we sort of, we report here. There's obviously statutory requirements here, but yeah, by all means, bring something back. That'd be really useful. So, okay. And we're asked to note the contents of the presentation. So thank you, Lucy. Second item on the agenda item 8 is our report on attendance management on pages 9 to 16 of your agenda pack, and Andrea Denham, our HR business partner, will present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The report is on page 9. The report is to update the committee on the Q1 24-25 position, which is the 12-month position at the end of June 24. We last discussed the Q4 position, which was at the end of March 24, when we last met in May. At the bottom of page 9 is the comparison table. So as you'll see, there is the previous end of year positions for the last 4 years. So that's a 12-month end of year position. And then the 12-month position for that Q1 position ending in June. In June. And then the end of June total full-time equivalent days lost, and also a cost for that 12-month position. And that goes over the page for ESPO and EMS. So in terms of my commentary, at the end of Q1, you'll see that the chief executives and public health departments are below our 7.5 FTE per FTE day target. You will also observe that children's department, corporate resources, environment and transport, chief execs and East Midlands shared services all made improvements between the last position we looked at and this position that we are reviewing today. The council, so the LCC position, is now at 8.67. So we've made, during that difference in period, 0.6 improvement, but we still have work to achieve a 7.5 level at that LCC level, which is our corporate target. So moving on to reasons for absence at point 8. So the table here, these are end of the quarter positions, but these are all 12-month periods, so they aren't quarter positions, although they are taken at the end of each quarter that you'll see. These are the highest reasons for absence lost, plus the not disclosed category, which we continue to monitor. As you will see from the table, our highest reason for time lost, as we've discussed previously, is our mental health category. But you'll see that there is an improvement from the last position that we looked at and the June Q1 position. The tables that are over the page from point 10, so there's 2 pages of tables which look at 3 of the main reasons for time lost for each of the departments. So I'll move to the commentary that I've made, which is at the bottom of page 12. So I'm looking at the each of the department tables in this commentary. So down to point 11. So the key observation on these tables, there may be other things that you've particularly picked out, but my key observation is that the percentage of mental health absence in children's and environment and transport has improved. I know when we met with the committee at our previous meeting, we had a particular discussion around the committee's concerned around the level of mental health absence in children's department. So I think it's a positive that we're obviously seeing an improvement, particularly in that department, but to note that improvement in environment and transport as well. Over the page to page 13 is the breakdown of long and short-term absence. And as we usually see, particularly in our large departments, we have more time lost for long-term than short-term. There are some variations, and in the smaller departments, it can be flipped round the other way, where we see more on short-term than we do long-term, which is because we have a smaller workforce. But the spread of the short-term and long-term is very similar to what we usually see. And then moving on to point 11 is the breakdown of service level data. I think there's a point that I just wanted to highlight, which is under adults and communities, the integration, access and prevention. I spoke to one of my business partner colleagues that works in adults and communities around the increase in that area. That is the service area that homes the home care service. And when she's done the analysis into that change during that period, the change is very much around short-term absence that happened in the home care services around that area, and it was communicable. I'm saying that word totally wrong, I do apologise. Diseases, so coughs, colds, stomach problems, etc., that happened during that increase in that period. They've did further work around infection control, hand washing, looking after yourself around all of those types of things. And they've got robust arrangements around managing short and long-term absence in those services. So they have taken action to manage the absence. They've had that in place, but they've obviously made further actions to address that. But I just wanted to point that out because I think that stands out in the data set. Moving on to page 15, the committee had asked me for some comparative data. So I went out to colleagues across other councils and asked to share information. I had these are the councils that responded to me. And the way we do this, obviously for a public report, is we do this in an anonymous way. I've highlighted in bold where we stand in this table. The council that is at 7.32 is actually within our region, and is actually a colleague that I'm working with on another project. So I've actually had a very good conversation with the lead in that area around what they're doing. And I hope that you'll be reassured that a lot of the actions that they're taking in their council are very similar to the actions that we are taking. Robust policy, robust attendance management, a solid wellbeing offer, attendance management data for managers. So I'm having further conversations with her all the time because I meet her on a monthly basis around another item to see how they're developing their attendance approach. But reassuring that there is no magic solution. It really is all of the things that we're doing and that we need to continue to do those robustly. So in terms of recommendations at point 5, today I'm asking the committee to note the overall position at the end of June and for any questions or comments on my report. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. I'll open it for questions. I've got Bertie and then I've got Barry to start with. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. On the comparison table, just to confirm, are they all county councils? Or are they potentially a mixture of borough and district?
They are all city or counties. There are no borough or districts.
Thank you, Chair. Andrea, thanks very much. I guess over the 3 years I've been on this committee, bit by bit, we've been asking for more information. I know I've asked for quite a lot of this myself, actually, the breakdowns, etc., because it starts to give us a feel for where things are. And I kind of, and to be honest, I've done it in a way, bit by bit, so we get more information I can see from that. And I kind of feel like the next step for me was splitting this up between, and this is something I've probably always been really more interested in, is what are we causing and what's happening outside, because we have little impact on what happens outside. And I say a little impact, obviously in the stress and mental health, there's bereavement and things like that, and we can obviously have an impact on helping people in those sort of situations. But so if it's like other musculoskeletal injuries, are they happening here or are they happening outside? And if they're happening here, what are we doing to deal with that, especially on the stress and depression? And as I've mentioned before, I've got a family member works in another council, manages the EHCPs, and I see the level of abuse that they receive, herself and the team, from parents that don't get what they're expecting to get, and the number of complaints that go in, which are you're always thrown out, and that adds an enormous amount of stress into those jobs. And that's why I can appreciate, and this is why we ask for the breakdown, I can appreciate when we look at certain departments why they are much higher than others, because I understand what they're up against. And when it's actually really useful, because she lets me know all the ins and outs of what's going wrong. And predominantly there was a big staffing problem, which is being dealt with. But because of that staffing problem, all the staff had way too much to do, couldn't keep up with everything, and that added to the stress. And it probably took the council a year or so going through with the employment committee, etc., to work out that was the problem. And I kind of feel like the data you're bringing us now is really starting to feed through, and we can understand where the issues are. Now I feel like that the next thing is, and we get this report every time, every meeting, and it's great, but it's what are we doing to overcome it? And I can see from the figures they're going down and little bits happen, but what I'm interested now is what programs do we have that really drive down into some of this stuff. And I think the next level is to split out from these figures what can we have an impact on, and what are we what are we causing and what is outside, so at least we can drill down on that. Thank you.
Do you want to come back on that? Sorry.
Yeah, I'll need to go away and have a look at how our data is recorded. I think as of today, our managers are recording the reasons for absence. In terms of the causes of absence, we know, well, if I talk about mental health, we know from previous studies that we've done that the majority of absence, there is never it's this or it's this. It's often a mixture. I have been asking our attendance team that manage, which many of you will be meeting this afternoon when we do our training exploration, to record in their data what the causes are, or whether it's mixed, so I can get a feel for whether or not that's still true. In terms of musculoskeletal, we haven't recorded that in our system, so I need to go away and see what we actually have recorded. Mental health, I potentially will be able to give us a temperature check, because I have currently got the team. I think I probably have about 3 months worth of data already collected. After our last meeting, I started to ask the team to do that. So I think I can probably, well, I will be able to bring that temperature check. And I think that will be something that I think will be useful for us to look at, because I think mental health being our main reason for absence is probably the best place for us to start, to see whether or not we then want to expand that further and invest in our system being able to do that. So if I can commit to do that for the next meeting, and then we can move from there.
Yeah, that sounds good. And as I say, I think it's because having sat on this for 3 years, I haven't really seen anyone come back and say, well, this department just hasn't got enough staff, and that's where we've got a problem. Now, okay, we have to look at where the money comes from to deal with that, but that's the kind of thing I'd expect to be coming back to generate the conversation to say this is why we've got this problem, and then it could be a simple thing as, okay, we need to get outside contract staff in to help, and then you start to see the numbers fall down and you start to say, yep, that's definitely part of the problem. But I'm not really sort of feeling over these 3 years that I'm seeing something that we're doing tangible to get rid of it. We're doing a really good job of recording, and the information you've given us is great now, because I really feel I can pull it apart and understand it more. But I think it's taking that next step. Thank you.
Okay, it's interesting. I mean, certainly the senior leadership team, I mean, those type of conversations, which we haven't seen here, are certainly raised there. I mean, the scrutiny committees that we have, scrutiny commission, you certainly see those coming through those papers that we have. So it's, but yeah, it's that they have evolved, and I think the level of information. I mean, I don't know whether any members have got any other questions. James?
Thank you very much for the report. I'm looking at the table at the bottom of page 9 under point 4, sickness absence current position. And forgive me, I'm also subbing on this, so I'm not sort of had the background to this, but I noticed for a number of the departments, environment, transport, children and family services, corporate resources, the figures for 2021 are significantly lower than every subsequent year. Is that related to COVID and the fact that people would have been working from home at that time, or is and the figures since then, are they more like the historic norm, or has something changed since 2021 to make it worse? And if it's related to people working from home, then is there something around people carrying on when they can just go to their desk and turn the computer on versus having to come into County Hall? I've worked for an employer in the not so distant past whose view was, if you're well enough to work, you can come in, and if you're not well enough to work, you don't work. When actually there's, in the 21st century, there's a happy medium between, I can probably get my computer on at home, but I don't want to come in. And I'm just wondering if there's any sort of lessons we can learn there around flexible learning, working, and the benefits to the organisation of that more flexible approach.
Those figures are a combination of some things we can replicate and some things we cannot. So flexible working does have an impact, and we see that within services now who can work hybrid and services who can't. But in terms of the stark difference is social distancing. And actually community changes. So those figures are a reflection of the fact that people weren't intermingling in the community, and actually coughs, colds, stomach infections weren't happening. People weren't going, also on a long-term sickness basis, people weren't going in for operations. People also weren't being diagnosed at that point, very sadly, with really serious illnesses. So actually lots of different types of absence and illnesses weren't happening during that period. What we then saw after the pandemic is we saw people then going in for operations later on, which put step-ups up. We saw people being diagnosed late with illnesses that then had a really detrimental impact on them. So we then had I'm sure you saw it in your own lives and your own communities, you saw this aftershock of health because of that. But actually, I think what we saw during that period is, because people weren't intermingling, people stopped getting those illnesses that stopped taking them away. But hybrid working also helped as well. So I think it is and obviously we can't replicate lockdown and people being, stopping intermingling. We wouldn't want to do that. I mean, it would be a really easy way for me to get the figures down, but not a realistic, practical, or even nice way for me to do it. We need to do it in a sensible and sustainable way. So, but definitely the hybrid working does really help, particularly at this time of year where all those things are going back around again. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, if you want to come back, and then Trevor. So.
Okay, it's just a secondary question, really. Apologies. It's the non-disclosed. So again, I'm looking on number 8, point 8, reasons for sickness absence non-disclosed. Does that mean that the manager knows and isn't telling HR, or is it the employees phoning up going, "I'm sick, but I'm not going to tell you why"?
It's a category in the system. So absence is entered by the manager. So the manager will enter puts in the category. So the manager will enter not disclosed. In some areas, because of the volume, the setup, they will have an admin support that puts that in, and they might not have been given the information, so they might put in not disclosed. For the first 7 days, legally, we have to have that category. The managers, once it might be there's some ambiguity around that reason, or they might not have told them. There can be all sorts of reasons why there's not disclosed. The manager is then supposed to update it, and the absence team that do in my service then are supposed to they chase them up to try and get those reasons recorded, because I want those reasons, because without those reasons, I don't know what to do about that absence. It's a real, and I know this committee's really wanted me to drive that down, because without the information, can't take action. So it can be a number of reasons why. In the main, most individuals will tell their manager. I'm sure there are some situations where individuals might not feel comfortable initially talking to their manager, and they'll make other arrangements, maybe to talk to a more senior manager about something maybe embarrassing or upsetting. But in the main, it's usually an admin issue that needs resolving.
Looking at hybrid working, and we also mentioned earlier on recruitment and retention. I'm sure when we come to analyse the sickness breakdown, we also will need the caveat, which is, and we really ought to look as well and state the recruitment and retention improvement or non-improvement of hybrid working. I'm always in favour of trying to enhance recruitment and retention, and I'm assuming hybrid working does that, but I'm not sure. So if as we're bringing figures in the long term now, that would be a useful category for me to get some reassurance on. Thank you.
Anything you want to come back on that, Andrew? Comment really, so Lucy?
Yeah, at the next meeting, we should be able to, we've done a bit of a survey around working practices. Yeah. So that's due to go through to SCG at the beginning of October, and then it'll make its way to employment. So.
Any other questions? I think the only observation I make is you've obviously got your mental health and your physical health. Back in 21-22, mental health was 28%, in 24-25 mental health is 28%. So it's that physical, that split between physical and mental, and it seems to be that with everything we're doing with hybrid working, it's still that balance. But I do agree with what members have said. The level of information and detail we're now getting is improving as we go along. So it does help this committee move forward. So thank you. And we are asked to note the update provided on the council's overall position on sickness absence as at the end of June 24. Does everyone agree? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andrea. Item 9 on the agenda is the pay policy statement on pages 17 to 34 of your agenda pack, and Sarah Short, our HR service manager, is going to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here this morning to seek approval for the Council's pay policy statement for 25-26, and we have a statutory requirement to forward this to the County Council for approval in December of this year, so it can be published in time for the end of March 2025. So under the Localism Act 2011, local authorities in England and Wales are required to produce and publish a pay policy statement for the financial year. And as I've just mentioned, the 25-26 statement needs to be published on or before the 1st of April next year. So I'd like to draw members' attention to the pay policy statement at Appendix A. For the purpose of the statement, remuneration includes basic salary, pension, and other allowances that arise from the employment relationship. The grading of all posts at the County Council, with the exception of centrally employed teachers, is determined by the Hay Job Evaluation Scheme that we've used for a number of years. That ensures a fair, consistent and non-discriminatory process, and that the County Council complies with equal pay legislation. And we discussed our equal pay audit at the last Employment Committee in May. In terms of the 2024-25 pay award. I just want to give a little bit of an update on where we are with that, and we'll come on to that in the next report as well. For employees who are on National Joint Council terms and conditions, which is the bulk of our employees, the national employers made an offer of £1,290 on the NJC, so that's the nationally agreed pay spine. We have our own pay spine, and 2.5% for employees who are above the maximum of that pay spine but below Deputy Chief Officer salaries. We're currently waiting for the conclusion of ballots by Unison and Unite, and those ballots run until the 16th of October. So we're anticipating that we will get the outcome of those probably the following week. The GMB union have already voted to accept the pay offer. So that means that as has been the case over the last couple of years, the ballot timing means that if those union members do not vote for industrial action and the pay award is agreed, it's likely that our employees won't receive that until December pay at the very earliest. Once we have got that information, I will update Appendix B. So if that pay award is agreed at the end of October, I will update the Appendix B with the pay spine so that when that is submitted to full council, the correct pay scales are included. And I'll bring a report back in December to update the committee on where we are with the pay award. So the recommendation is therefore that the committee are asked to approve the pay policy statement for submission to the County Council on the 4th of December, and to note that following the agreement of the 24-25 pay offer, the 24-25 pay structure will be circulated to the committee.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I mean, the only point I'd raise on that, it was just the comments at 13 that should the pay award be agreed as outlined, it is within the forecasted budget that we set when we did the MTFS. So that's obviously good from a sort of county council employer point of view. So it's any questions, Linda?
Would all these figures change? We have a new government who are making massive changes to employment law and employees' rights. So could this, we could agree this, but in the next few months it could be out of date because of changing legislation?
It's unlikely that the pay will change in terms of the pay policy statement. Local government is outside of a lot of the national negotiating bodies. Obviously, we have the Teachers Review Board, but we don't have, local government isn't seen as a single employer in that respect. So we don't have a national review board for local government pay. So that's not going to change. The pay offer, which was made by the national employers, was a full and final offer, and they have reiterated that to the trade unions. So we won't see a change in the pay side of things. Where we will see a change is around our terms and conditions potentially. There are a number of proposals that the new government have made, particularly around employment rights from day one, which will have an impact on employment. And as I mentioned earlier, things like having to publish race and disability pay gaps is another element of this. Issues around 0 hours contracts, how we use those. There's a number of things that we can, we will need to look at once we know what the government plans are actually going to be, and they start putting some proposals in a form of an employment bill, which we are expecting in this Parliament. So once we've got that information, as Lucy indicated in her presentation as part of the forward plan, we can bring that back and explain what those changes are likely to be.
Any further questions? 30.
Just on touch on point 13 again. You're saying the 3.9% is within that forecasted budget. How much within it is that, for example? Have we counted, say, 4% and it's gone to 3.9?
I think if memory serves me right, when we set it, I think we set a 5% figure. I think as a prudence, it may have been 6%, but I think we set what our expectations may be based on what the last pay award was. But perhaps you could just clarify that.
Yeah, I believe it was 6.
I think there was an expectation that we get the same request, so we were looking at what it had cost us previously. So we were just being prudent, and I think most sort of local authorities throughout, certainly Leicestershire and even down to parish councils who were also on these same NJC pay scales, I think they all did a prudent sort of budgeting forecast as well. So, okay. All right, if there's no further questions, we're asked to approve the pay policy statement at Appendix A and note the current position offers. Does everyone agree? Noted. All right, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. And again, the next item is Sarah's, it's the JNC Chief Officer Pay Award for 24-25, pages 35 to 38 of your agenda packs. And Sarah's going to present this report. Thank you.
Hopefully this one is relatively straightforward. So the purpose of this report is to seek formal approval from the committee of the nationally negotiated National Joint Council Pay Award for Chief Officers, which in terms of county council employees, that is employees on grades 18 to 21. The JNC pay award was agreed earlier in this year by the National Joint Council, and the offer which was agreed was to increase salaries by 2.5%. We consulted with chairman and relative spokespeople back in August, and we have actually implemented that pay award in August pay. So the recommendation is to approve the JNC pay award for employees on grades 18 to 21.
Simple report. Members, any questions? No? Okay. I was consulted when this was done, and because it was an agreed award, it was agreed for implementation. So that was certainly part of the process I went through, and also as lead member for resources. So we are asked to approve the implementation of the JNC pay awards for employees on grades 18 to 21. Does everyone agree? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Item 11 is a report on the review of the employer discretions pension regulations on page 39 to 50 of your agenda packs. And Andrew Stewart, our Head of People Services, is going to present the item. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. So just to confirm the position of this paper, it's a requirement to review our mandatory discretions under the Local Government Pension Fund regulation. Our last review at Leicestershire County Council was in 2018. The review has been undertaken following an update on guidance from the Leicestershire Pension Fund in 2024. Following a review with the Leicestershire Pension Fund, we have reviewed it and continue to maintain our existing position on discretions required by the Local Government Pension Fund regulation. So the committee is asked to approve the mandatory discretions as outlined in Appendix 1, the non-mandatory discretions as outlined in Appendix 3, and to note the operational approach as set out in Appendix 4. And I'm happy to go through any more detail as required.
Thank you, Andrew. Questions from members? You've obviously had the paper in the pack, so do members have any questions? No. This is requirements, being all members of all employers who use the local government pension scheme have to approve the discretionary policies. So, I've done that myself, so as a parish council clerk. So yes, so if there's no questions, no comments, we are asked to note that a review has been undertaken in regard to our pensions discretions, approve the mandatory discretion of the LGPS regulations as set out Appendix 1, approve the non-mandatory discretion under LGPS regulations as set out Appendix 3, and also note the County Council's operational approach to pensions regulations as in Appendix 4. Does everyone agree? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Andrew. And item 12 is the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Annual Report 23-24 on pages 51 to 88 of your agenda packs. I think Colin's probably going to start us off with this. So our Health and Safety and Wellbeing Manager, and I know Amy's with us today as well. So over to yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of the report is to give the Employment Committee details information around how the performance of the Health and Safety Wellbeing team has been over the last 12 months. We set out a 5-year strategy and we record annually the data that's needed to measure our performance as a team. if I could turn to page 3 of the actual report, that gives the highlights of the key facts contained within the report. And I think we've tried to simplify how the data is presented. And I think this is quite clear where you can see 801 injuries, 26 RIDDORs. We've delivered 2,666 internal counselling sessions. The team have undertaken 39 audits. We've had a campaign on the importance of reporting on near misses, and we've had 432 of those reported to us. And then slip, trips and fall remains our highest category, as it has done for many, many years, and we've had 232 of those. And we've had 140 increased calls of physical assaults and challenging behaviour, which is increasing. And the health and safety and wellbeing team have trained more than 5,350 staff on training. So that's the broad highlights, and the content of the report is clear there. However, slip, trips and falls on page 4 does remain our highest category. And on page 6, it gives some detail around the reports that we make to the Health and Safety Executive, who are the enforcement authority for our health and safety work. And we've reported those now. Good thing about those reports are, and what's reassuring for us, is the level of injury that's being sustained is not the natural reason why we have to report it. The reason we report it is the person's been off work for more than 7 working days. So there's lots of categories within RIDDOR where we have to report, for example, we had amputations or scalding or other types of things where we need to report. The majority of our reports are because people have had time absent from work. On page 11, we highlight the areas that we've audited internally, and each department will have a full in-depth report about how that's found. Page 14 highlights our training statistics, and our team have had a massive campaign during the last couple of years to try and get more engagements on training to raise the competence of people and managers in the organisation, and that's increased by 59%, which is reassuring. We set ourselves some KPIs on page 16, and we can see how we've virtually met all those KPIs, and next year is the final reporting year of that strategy. On page 17, we give some detail around the counselling statistics, and that's our internal counsellors who deal with the wellbeing side. And on page 19, we have a summary of the work undertaken by the Health and Safety Department. On page 21, we've gone into some more detail around the work of the wellbeing counsellors who do the talking therapies within the organisation. And from that data, we can see that the top 5 categories are work-related stress, anxiety, bereavement, personal relationships and depression. And we don't distinguish anybody coming into our service, whether it's a personal issue or a workplace issue. We treat them both the same, so we keep them in work. And I can confirm from the stats that we produce, 82% of those people are actually in work, so we're maintaining those people in work. So I think that's reassuring that the wellbeing offer is supporting people staying in work. And that really concludes my short update on that report.
Thank you, Colin. As always, it's a very full and very detailed and informative annual report. And yeah, I'd just compliment you again on the quality of it. I think a lot of questions that you may ask are answered lower down in the report, but I will open it up to members for questions. So over to Trevor. Thank you.
Just looking at where we are in the world today and looking at violent incidents, can we drill down a little bit for the sake of the safety of our employees, and can you give me any reassurance that we are on the ball and proactive in terms of protection?
Yeah, I think the nature of that is the society that we live in today has definitely increased, and we do have and encourage a very open reporting process. So everybody has access to the reporting system, so you don't always have to go through your manager. So we have a very, very open methodology. So I would hope that our figures are actually quite correct and quite accurate. We do follow up with investigations also to see if there's anything else we can do to help support and protect those staff once an instance has been reported.
Barry.
Thank you, Chair. When you drill down, like looking at things like pupil-related injuries, because obviously I can imagine in schools there's all sorts of things. So if you've got an instance, I'm just thinking family member works in the nursery, they have a playground area, kids are always falling, little ones are always falling. But it's just a normal surface. And obviously if you had like a rubberized surface, you'd probably have a lot less problems. So do you get involved at that level with these things, monitoring and then school, and it keeps coming through forward with a similar sort of accidents happening time and time again? And are you able to go in there and advise them on what they should be doing to have that change? And are you able to enforce in any way those changes, etc.? And obviously if it's a school, then who's paying for it probably comes from here. So then are you able to then talk with the departments that would have to pay for that to push that? So how much sort of weight do you have behind you to sort of find a problem, see it reoccurring, come up with a solution and get it resolved?
I'm delighted to say we have massive support from the senior management of this organisation. If we feel that something needs to be changed, I can't think of a single thing I've been turned down ever that's needed to be done. So for example, around a flooring, if that needed improving, we would put a report into, if it was an LA school, as a business partner, or into the property services department, and we've always had that activity resolved. So yes, we do hold significant power. We can suspend activities and we can withdraw services from an area that was totally unsafe. But thankfully, that is extremely rare. And in fact, in my 15 years here, I can only think of once when I've actually had to do that.
Thank you. And Linda, thank you.
Thank you for that. That's quite reassuring. That's fine if it's something that can be new flooring, whatever. What can you put in place for, and like you put in your report, verbal assaults and physical assaults have gone up. What is put in place to try and lessen them? I know, you know, before I retired, I worked with learning disabilities. Yes, you know, I had a broken collarbone and I had somebody attack me with a knife. I don't feel that the individuals that did these sort of things weren't doing them with intent, if you like. It was part of their condition that they had outbursts and things like that. But obviously we have staff working for learning disabilities, and even you can get children that can be quite aggressive to members of staff. What do we put in place to try and, as much as possible, protect staff? And that what can you do to forward that sort of thing, not just the faulty equipment or whatever?
Yeah, I recognise that certain elements of our staff are more exposed to certain levels of risk, and exactly the category that you're mentioning. In that, we do a lot of training with the staff to support them in how to deal with it. It's not a personal thing, it's because the condition of the person that's causing them to do that harm to them. And I think a lot of people in that environment accept there is a level of risk with that type of work. However, we do support them. We have open reporting. We do training with them. For those people where it's not so understandable, for example, at some of our recycling household waste, we have the opportunity for staff to be wearing body cameras so they can trigger it. And we've seen a significant positive effect on the numbers reported with those body cameras, because they can warn the person, the aggressor, that we're actually going to video it, and that changes behaviour significantly. So some of the steps we have taken have been really positive in that area. Particularly, they've been really good in supporting staff in having those cameras.
I think I just wanted to come back with just one thing. It's good that, you know, waste management and you're getting the cameras there. But if some of these issues on verbal or physical assaults on staff, do you also look at the staffing levels? Because that can be a trigger. You know, if there aren't enough staff around somebody, you've got a member of staff who is trying to do 105 things at once, and a person might feel they're being neglected or not listened to or whatever. So there are, on some incidents, there are a reason why somebody would do something. And if so, do you look at like the levels of staffing to make sure that that that's not one of the causes, if you like.
Absolutely, we do. And we discuss everything that we investigate, we discuss openly with the manager. And if that was the root cause of the reason why somebody is being physically hurt or physically assaulted during their work because of that, we would put that into a report to the manager for them to address.
Just to mention as well, another sort of measure that we've introduced over the last few years is a huge investment in a lone working protection app. So this is something that's been rolled out to over 1,500 staff members. And obviously it's not about preventing the physical abuse, which is obviously something that's really important, but it is about equipping staff with a device that allows them to get support really quickly and effectively, and sort of takes them directly through to a support service, so that if they are being abused, they've got that sort of way of raising the alarm and getting assistance from the emergency services really quickly. So we've felt that staff have been really reassured by having that sort of safety device on their phones, and also it comes with different sort of devices that they can wear around their wrist to raise the alert in quite a sort of a discreet and quick way.
Okay, thank you. Bertie?
Thanks for the report. On the KPI number 6, I just noticed with the number of managers trained in health and safety is the only red one. So do we, and you have a plan type of how we can make that green for next year?
Yeah, it's our lifetime ambition to get that one green. There's a huge push in the organisation. We've taken this report to all DMTs, and each DMT is supportive of us to push for those managers to be trained. Yeah.
And these are always far too busy, aren't they? That's always the answer. But yeah, I think it's been raised before. It's sort of, yeah, we need to make sure it's being delivered and they understand the importance of it, but not only for their sort of staff below them, but also for themselves. So yeah, it's good luck with that. So, the only comment I had, obviously the number of sorry, James, I'll take yours first and I'll finish off. Yeah, James.
Just a comment on, just to follow on to the last question and answer, actually. Can it not just be like mandated part of training for managers? Am I missing something there? Or
it's some parts of it. The management of health and safety training is mandatory, and I think with all our mandatory training, it's an ongoing issue of getting 100% to attend for a huge array of reasons. But we are running a campaign this current year to try and achieve that 100% figure.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it's just interesting, the number of sort of well-being referral sessions is actually down from last year. Yeah, obviously our stress and mental health levels are going up. We've seen that in an earlier report. So, but no, it's a really good service. The only question I'd have is if you talk to a sort of member of staff in one of your sessions from a counsellor, do you then have that escalation session that you say, right, this person is suffering from suicidal thoughts? We need to bring like the LPT in or raise it up. Is that a process that you have, and is that covered?
Yes, Chairman, absolutely. All those people who disclose suicidal thoughts are referred on both to their GP and to the other services that can support with that. And we also have all the details of the charities and contact numbers on the intranet pages but under the wellbeing session, so every employee can access that information and that data.
Okay, thank you. And overall, I mean, it's I sort of had about 1,631 incidents, and we have 6,000 staff, and we have 365 days a year with it we work, and each member of staff does many things during the day, and you've literally got millions and millions of potential incidents that could happen. But I think it's a really good report, and I think it shows that as Leicestershire County Council, we're still doing a very good job, and our staff are certainly valued with the services that we offer there. So yeah, thank you. So. We're asked to note the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Annual Report for 23-24 and endorse the work undertaken in partnership with the departments by the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Service to keep the Council compliant in this area. All agree? Yes, thank you. Thank you. Our final report today, item 13, is the Organisational Change Policy and Procedure Action Plans on pages 89 to 94 of your agenda pack. And Damien Buckley, our Democratic Services Officer, will present the report. Damien.
Thank you, Chair. This report is presented to committee at each meeting and provides details of current action plans which contain provision for compulsory redundancy and details of their implementation. There's 2 appendices, one with current action plans and one with action plans currently ongoing. And members are just asked to note the report.
There's comments or questions? No, there's not in the report, so it's thank you. So we're happy to note as you've asked for. So it's current action plans contain provision for compulsory redundancy and details of progress in their implementation. So thank you for that. As mentioned earlier, item 14, we have no urgent items, so moves on to item 15, date of the next meeting, which will take place on the 5th of December 2024. So all that remains is to say thank you for those subbing today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Can I remind members, officers will be delivering an attendance management session for members that are available in the Employment Committee today at 12:30 in the executive room down towards the council chamber. So, and I'd encourage members to attend that session. So with that, I shall close the meeting and thank you all for your attendance. Thank you.